Welcome to the Book Faire Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an interview with author Alex Gino. We also have updates to ongoing stories from Alabama, as well as the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the latest news revolving around book bans across the United States. Let's start with an interview with Alex Gino. Can you start by introducing yourself for the audience and the book that we'll be discussing today?
Sure. My name is Alex Gino, and I am a writer of middle grade books with often queer and trans characters, though not always the focus of the story, because we get to do lots of different things other than just be queer. My sixth book just came out. It's called Chris Makes a Friend, and it's about a one best friend kind of kid who ends up away from that best friend and end up spending the summer kind of lonely and kind of with their annoying little sister as their really only support and companion person. And what do you do when you're lonely?
And Chris and her best friend Vicky, they have a wonderful plan for the summer that is called the Great Summer 72 Book Challenge. And can you explain what that is for the listeners?
Yeah, so there are 72 days in the summer, and these kids are absolute bookworms. And so they've decided to read a book a day all summer long. And they're going to uh, record all 72 books.
And do you have any insight? What were you a voracious reader like Chris was?
Can't say that I ever read a book a day all summer long, but I absolutely was a voracious reader. I do remember going to the library every week and getting 6 books a week, which is almost 7. So maybe, maybe we're getting close there. But I was reading the books that were available in the 80s, basically. And Chris gets to read the books that are available now. And there are actually a lot of amazing books available now. And so one of the fun things about doing this book is I got to create the actual list of the 72 books that she read. And a lot of them, most of them I have read. There are one or two fantasies that I haven't read, but Chris reads more fantasy than me. Um, and it was really great to get to compile that.
And so you said that you were never a book a day kind of person, and that's a lot to ask for people. And this is before we get into a little bit more about Chris's story. I want to get a little more insight into what you feel. How do you feel about the whole DNF did not finish, or maybe even using audiobooks when you talk about books that you've read? Do you feel that there is any good reason to be gatekeeping what counts as reading a book, or do you think that getting this general synopsis is enough to say that you read this book?
Um, I do not in any way distinguish between reading a book with your eyes and reading a book with your ears. So, audiobook, absolutely no difference. If you did not finish the book, um, you had an experience with the book, and I absolutely support not finishing the book. Did you read the book? I mean, in terms of like a challenge or whatever, I don't know. I don't care. I usually say that if I've read more than 100 pages, it counts. For me, I'm not really concerned with that, with how many books I've read. Uh, but sometimes the best thing to do is to DNF a book so that I can experience a different book.
Right. And that's something almost like there's like a compulsion to want to finish it, to be able to like put down in the book report that you read the whole thing. But being able to experience more books is so good. And you touched on this already, that and this is part of the reason why I love doing this podcast so much, is there are a lot of really wonderful and diverse books being written for young readers today that weren't around 10, 15, 20 years ago. What are some of the contemporary authors that you got to learn about in the process of Chris Makes a Friend, or maybe just as a writer in the publishing space today?
That's the thing is I got to put all the people that I admire and respect and I consider my peers into this log. And there are so many of them. I always say that I am not a librarian, and I believe it is the librarian's job to know facts and things like that, not an author's. But I will say that working with peers like Kyle Lukov and Meg Medina and Kaja Langley and golly, I'm so bad at this. I wrote 72 of them in the book. I should look at what I wrote in the book. But Mike Jung and Anne Claire Lazat and all of these people who are writing fabulous stories that we didn't get to see.
Yes, and the list of 72 books is included in the afterword of Chris Makes a Friend. So anybody who gets this also gets a wonderful checklist of 70 books that they can actually go and look at, and a couple that are made up titles. Uh, was there a particular reason to choose fictional titles in the book, or was it just a timing thing, or just not enough books to think of?
There were more books I could have put in. The two books that are not real are Easter eggs. One of them is a book that was read by characters in one of my other books, and the other one is a novelization of a TV series that one of my other characters really likes.
And I wanted to direct it back to the dedication at the front of the book where you call out that this was written for your. Can you talk a little bit about Chris and her relationship with Becca, her little sister, in this book?
So, in some ways, this is the most autobiographical book I've written. Different books are going to pull out different parts of who I am. But I absolutely had a younger sister. She was 5 years younger. She was sociable. My grandmother's husband used to call her the mayor of the block. And when I felt I was a teenager and there was all these children in my house. I was like, why are there all these children in my house? Because my sister likes people. It's terrible. And so she was Becca is more athletic, but she was sociable and hang out with people and likes to run around on the block. And I was in my room with books like that. And yeah, I never, ever, ever, ever expected to dedicate a book to her. Um, in fact, someone who read an early copy was like, wow, the sibling rivalry is really harsh. I don't know how great I feel about that. I'm like, I toned it down from what I did.
And so
So
you
yeah.
said that you never thought you would dedicate a book to your sister. Is that something that you're comfortable with unpacking a little bit?
Um,
It's a loaded phrase. I'm so
we
sorry.
were
I just want to.
I mean, the thing is we were very, very, very different as children, and we did not get along as children. And, it wasn't till I was probably in my 30s that I really was able to, like, see her as a person and not just the annoying little person who was being frustrating, like, she's an actual adult human being with children now. Um, Not that you have to have children to be an adult, but it was, yeah, there was a lot of sibling rivalry in my house growing up.
And Chris, being an analog for yourself, can you talk a little bit about the process of creating a character that reflects you so much? Is there a lot of vulnerability in putting so much of yourself into a character like that, especially when it comes to a process of creating something in publishing that's going to be looked at by editors and publishers in a critical lens?
I mean, sure, uh, that's what writing is. Um, Writing is about putting your own truth on the page, even if it's fully fictional. And so getting to put something closer and closer and closer to my truth in each book, or another lens that is more fuller of my truth in each book, um, is I mean, yeah, maybe it's vulnerable, but that's the craft. Like, that's the job, that's the goal. There's generality and specificity. So the more that I can tap into my experiences and the more that I can use them in what I'm writing, the more that a wide range of people can find something in it that is genuine because it actually really did happen to someone.
We've talked a lot about Chris and her sister. I want to also touch on Chris's mother and her girlfriend, her mother's girlfriend, Frank. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with the mom in Chris Makes a Friend?
Sure. Chris's mom has chronic pain, and I've read a fair number of books where a parent passes away or a parent is sick and then recovers. And the first story is tragic, the second story is hopeful. When you have chronic pain, it's not about tragedy, but it's also not about looking forward to the day when things will magically be great. It's about some days are worse than others. It's about going, like, you are living, you're not waiting for something to change. You are living your life. And that is what Chris's mom is doing. And Chris's mom needs surgery. And so that's why Chris and Becca are going away for the summer, is to give mom some space to recover. And that's a bit of a burden for a kid. That the thing that I can do to best help my mom is to not be around.
Right. And that idea of seeing a parent that needs something as serious as just time and distance to recover is a lot to ask for a 10 or 11-year-old, someone who is going from 5th into 6th grade. Do you find difficulty in balancing the level of maturity that these characters exhibit in these books that are having characters that are so young?
I have a lot of respect for young people. I have a lot of respect for the brains of young people. They are more concrete than adult brains. They can feel things more intensely than adult brains. Things can feel bigger because they have fewer experiences. Uh, but they know what's going on around them, and they know when things are being held from them, and they know what's right, and they know what's not fair. So no, I don't have a hard time seeing thoughtful things in young people.
I always love when you can definitely tell that someone sees the young characters as being able to handle the more serious topics, but also seeing the little things of how they handle those emotions in stronger ways with less emotional regulation. Not so much that they
Right,
overreact, but they have a hard time having an appropriate reaction.
right. Things are big, and yet they are used to things being new. Adults often have a harder time with change and a harder time with not understanding something and a harder time with, wait, that's not how I thought it was. Kids are constantly finding out that things today are not what they thought they were yesterday.
And now, now that we've got the mother, who is Frank? Can you talk a little bit about that character and the inclusion of having a non-binary character that uses she/her pronouns in the book?
I know non-binary people who use she her pronouns, and the people in my books reflect the people I know. So why would there not be non-binary people who use she her pronouns in my book sometimes?
Yeah,
That's, I
that's a
mean, like, that's all I got is, like, this girlfriend is really kind, really sweet, loves her girlfriend's kids, and also is kinda taking on a role that is kinda domestic, uh, maybe more than she would have if the mom didn't need her in those ways. If they had more of, like, a just a traditional relationship, who knows that she'd be driving the kids to school.
And it's not so much that it's not a traditional relationship. It is a family structure. It's a mom, a step parent, or maybe a parent's partner, and it's the communal raising with the grandparents with Nana and Papa as well. It's just again a reflection of real life and the way that families can be structured, and how because the mother has this chronic pain, Chris, Becca, they just have this family dynamic that some people may not see all the time reflected in media.
A lot of it is modeled on, my BFF who has chronic pain and who has kids, and those kids have had more adults in their life who aren't their mom doing things that their mom might. than most kids do. They've had adults living in the house because mom needs another person around. They've had these things, and yeah, it's real.
Now to just kind of tie everything together in Chris Makes a Friend, who is the friend that Chris makes?
Chris makes a friend, Mia. Mia is also stuck in Massachusetts for the summer and also has a younger sibling who is annoying. And it's really nice for Chris to have someone to talk to.
And so we have Chris and we have Mia. They're both experiencing just the childhood thing of spending summertime away from home. And that's a theme that is used a lot in not just children's literature, but movies for young audiences, plays, any type of media that depicts young audiences. There's usually a time where we take them away from the familiar world. Do you have and do you want to just talk about why we find that as such a common theme in literature in media for young audiences?
So there's a thing that I've learned as a writer, which is that stories require plot. Write that down. Plot. Uh, Plot requires conflict, right? It means that something has gone wrong. There is some gap between what you desire and where you are. In your everyday life, most of those things get solved or they're unsolvable. They happen, they happen, they happen. It is when you're in a new situation that you have new conflicts, that you have new problems, that you have new things that you don't have your standard boring, would it be worth writing a book about responses to? Right? Like, because stories are about change, and we change when something has changed.
Right. And so, and especially with any type of media that's targeting young audiences, you're almost always going to have characters that are also young. And so it gives a wonderful opportunity to give those characters and those young people agency to control the situation and to make the change to address the situation. And that's something that I just absolutely love about books for young readers.
Right, when you're home, kind of everything's done for you, you don't have a lot of whatever, but then you're in this weird situation, and all of a sudden you get a little more choice, you get a little more, people don't know you as well.
Um, and one of the last things I wanted to talk about for Chris Makes a Friend was Nana and Papa have a rule about screen time. And it's easy to kind of talk about how they spend too much time on phones, but Chris is almost unique in the fact that she has books that she's always wanting to read. Can you talk a little bit about that cliche of go outside and play and also balancing that with how that doesn't really reflect the the desires that Chris has of wanting to just stay home and be on the phone all day.
Yeah, I definitely was in that camp of I don't want to go out and play. I am perfectly good with my book here, and I didn't have devices. I just literally had books and puzzles and things to do. Uh, uh, there is a um over emphasis on kids not having screens in some ways in terms of fear of it. And then there is also kids also do get a whole lot of screen time, and we don't really know how that impacts us long term. Um, and so I think what I was doing was trying to like play out like she does get to use her phone. It's like it's I think what it is like mornings they're not allowed to have their phones or like not before dinner or something, but they're allowed to use their phone every day. It's not a fully restrictive environment. Because I didn't want the grandparents to just be curmudgeonly jerks about it. Uh, but also I needed to get the kid away from the books in order to go meet Mia and go do things. So a little bit of it is plot device. Uh, but I would venture that it is within the realm of what kids have to deal with.
Mhm. And that takes you right back to stories need plot and plot needs conflict. So even though a child who is content to sit on the porch and read is something that a lot of adults would be absolutely thrilled to see a child doing. The grandparents needed to push Chris out of the house, even if artificially or arbitrarily in this situation.
Right. Also, as a bookworm, I was definitely told, get up and go outside. And I would get up and go outside and bring the book with me and read the book outside. And that was not what they meant.
And it contrasts Becca, who is constantly playing with the soccer ball or just in general outside playing in the grass, having fun, doing things that more active children do that Chris had no real interest in.
No, that stupid soccer ball. All it does is go thunk, thunk, thunk all summer long. And I had to come up with different ways to like write the onomatopoeia of that ball hitting the wall. Boom, 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 zap, zap. Cause yeah, it just all summer long. I can hear it.
And that's
Cause
more just
Becca doesn't
taking
have
from
anyone
real
to
life.
play with, which is so frustrating to Becca because Becca's like, I wouldn't be making those annoying sounds if you would play with me. And Chris is like, there is no way in the seven seas that I am playing soccer with someone who is 4 years younger than me and better at it.
I wanted to kind of take things off of Chris Makes a Friend just to address something that's been going on lately. In the state of Texas, they recently passed SB 12, which restricted the use of gender ideology teachings as well as DEI in schools, which led to the removal of over 40 books in a school district near Austin about a month ago during Banned Books Week. And Melissa, one of your books was one of the books that was pulled from shelves. And after about a week of review, nearly every single book was returned. And one of three books that didn't get put back was Melissa, which unfortunately was pretty specifically targeted by the bill's language, talking about teaching about gender ideology or transgender. I'm not a fan of this state. I'm sorry. Can you talk a little bit about just what you'd like to say about book bans in general, and especially with somebody who writes specifically about queer characters, because that's just that is reflecting your life, and that's the world that you live in, and how that affects you and how it
Yeah,
impacts you.
yeah. Book bans are bad. And when a book is banned because there's violence in it and there's like, I don't know, sexual themes or something that feels like intense, that sucks. But like you say, when the thing that is supposedly bannable is my existence and the existence of other trans people, yeah, that's a special wound. Um, I will say that books do not make people into different people. I read almost exclusively books with straight people as a kid, did not make me straight. But what books can do is they can make people more aware. Uh, if you are trans and you do not know about transness, the road back is hard, and the rates of self-harm and the rates of violence in general for trans people, particularly trans women of color, is absolutely catastrophic. And that is because of the shame and the hurt and the fear and the figuring out how to try to survive anyway, and it's real hard. Um, for people who are not transgender, reading about when that was trans when they are young means that when they are in their 20s and drunk and they see someone who is trans, they go, oh yeah, I know that. Not, oh, that offends me and now I must punch it. Because that is why the trans women are at risk, right? Because the people who are cisgender don't know about us. So there are a lot of adults who don't not like knowing things, don't like not knowing things in front of children. I think that showing children that you cannot know something and learn something is an incredible skill. Oh my goodness, I would love children to know that you continue to learn things as an adult. I would love adults to know that you continue to learn things as adults. Um, those are my thoughts. Book bans are bad.
I always say in these interviews that every book I read teaches me something about myself. And the fact that I get to read not even that I get to, that I choose to, that this is my preference to read books that are written for young readers, and these are the books that are teaching me about myself, it just shows that the space for authors that write for young audiences is they're doing a lot of really wonderful and impactful work, and it's important to teach that empathy, and that's why I love what I do here, and that's why I love talking to authors so much, because it's just there's just something so wonderful about being able to experience something outside of yourself and being able to grow that you just don't get outside of a book. That you I mean, other than like getting to know people, and people kind of suck sometimes.
There are different avenues, and also books are a really great one because you can explore things and you can try things out without affecting a real life actual person. You can explore things like, what would it mean to know someone trans? What would it mean to interact in this way? Uh, without necessarily goofing on an actual person.
And Alex, I like to wrap up the interviews by asking the same question to everybody that comes on. And that is an open-ended question just to let you have your final thoughts about yourself and what you do. And that is, Alex, how do you see yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
See myself as incredibly lucky and jealous because well, my work as a writer is to make me jealous, is to provide young people with the books that I did not have and I wish I did. I want them to have things I didn't. And so, yeah, it is a weird place to be in, but I want to be at a place where I don't fully understand young people because they've gone so far beyond what I was able to pick up. Like, I want my books to be outdated. I would love for someone to read Melissa and go, "Wait, why is there a problem?" Not should we ban this book, but like, why does this book even exist? This kid gets to like be in a school play. Boring. Like, what's the plot even here? That's my goal.
Thank you. That was an interview with Alex Gino. Their newest book, Chris Makes a Friend, is available now. You can learn more about Alex and their work at alexgino.com. Next, we'll be looking at some new releases, but first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Faire podcast, there are a few ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, favorite, or subscribe wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the show on Blue Sky or Instagram at Book Faire Pod, or go to patreon.com/thebookfair. On Patreon, episodes are posted early along with links to news sources used throughout the show. Following is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall, and you can add the RSS feed from the Patreon to your preferred podcast platform. Lastly, the best way to support the podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at some new releases for young readers, starting with Shaped by Love, an ode to moms' bodies by Nikki Powers and illustrated by Amanda Calatzi. Maternal love forms the backbone of this ode to moms that feels directed as much toward adult readers as towards children, interested in their own beginnings. The author's second-person free verse opens with acknowledgement of the prenatal and postpartum periods as transformative times. Proceeding lines segue into awe for the gestating body, highlights its strengths as well as the support and comfort it can provide across time and function. Cut paper collage and embroidery on canvas lend Calatzi's depth-filled paintings further energy and texture, as figures of various abilities and skin tones connect in outdoor and indoor settings, with geometric thread motifs connecting the joy-filled scenes. This book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next title to look at is Trail Rides and Starry Eyes by Katrina Emel. Sparks fly between a small-town rancher yearning for more and a hotshot actor on the verge of a big break in this feel-good romance. As an only child, Wyoming native Cassidy Sterling will someday inherit her family's Silver Stallion Ranch, along with its cattle, horses, mini velociraptors, aka chickens, and defiant goats. She worries, however, that life on the ranch might not be enough for her. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, actor Wilder Nash plans to break out from kitty actor fame into the big leagues, with a lead role in a Western TV series. But he must first convince the show's producers that he's an experienced horseman. Luckily, Wilder's agent, also Cass's uncle, whose decision to forsake ranching divides the Sterling family, arranges for Wilder to moonlight as a summer farmhand at the ranch, complete with riding lessons and cowboy training from Cass. Complications arise when starry skies and campfires ignite romantic sparks between the teens. While Wilder struggles to express his own unscripted feelings, Cass frets about their romance's approaching expiration date and what it will mean to her family should she follow Wilder to Hollywood. Alternating narration from author Emil delightfully wrangles disarming repartee farm animal hijinks, tight plotting, and an intimate Western setting into a swoony love story, starring a mostly white-cued cast. This book is recommended for ages 12 and up. And the final book to look at this week is Twin Tides by Hien Nguyen. Two long-lost identical twins of Vietnamese descent reunite to solve the mystery of their mother's murder in a debut horror offering reminiscent of The Haunting of Bly Manor that tackles themes of grief, family, and racial inequality. Georgetown student Araya Nguyen pays her way through school using the funds she receives, completing assignments for privileged classmates. Meanwhile, wealthy California influencer Calist Ha spends all her free time maintaining her carefully curated social media accounts. Previously unaware of the other's existence, the 18-year-olds are brought together when authorities inform them that the body of their disappeared mother, whom they barely remember, has been dredged from a lagoon in small-town Minnesota. Shocked to learn they're identical twins, the siblings set out to discover the truth behind their mother's death and their separation. But delving into the past reveals dark family secrets and rouses a murderous spirit seeking vengeance. Plotting pacing and hackneyed dialogue dampen readers' investment in the girl's plight. Still, Nguyen wields pulse-pounding scares, heart-rending scenarios, and chilling supernatural elements across the protagonist's alternating third-person narration. The intermittent first-person POV of an enigmatic character called the Ghoul heightens surprise throughout. This book is recommended for ages 12 and up. Now let's take a look at some news, starting with an update to an ongoing story from Alabama and the Fairhope Public Library. Last week we covered the Alabama Public Library Service's decision to delay votes on returning funding to Fairhope Public Library. $22,000 had been returned from Fairhope Library to the APLS, and in that time, Read Freely Alabama and Every Library Institute stepped up to help by raising $42,000 from the community and other nonprofit organizations. Elizabeth Williams, member of Read Freely Alabama, who helped create a GoFundMe page for the Fairhope, said, quote, "We are excited to finally, at long last, be handing over this money that was raised by the community, by the people of Alabama. Now that the APLS has made clear that they have no intention of returning our funding anytime soon, we are going to release the money." End quote. While the crowdfunding efforts took place shortly after the initial decision to freeze funding, the Board of Trustees for the Fairhope Public Library requested that the donation be delayed until the board decided on the fate of the library's funding. John Kroska, executive director of Every Library Institute, said, quote, "We wanted to step up and help safeguard that library from what was essentially blackmail on the part of the board, trying to force them to remove content that is otherwise legal." End quote. As of now, the Fairhope Library has received no funding from the Alabama Public Library Service since March, and the chair of the APLS said during a meeting last month he had not read the materials that were challenged that have led to this confrontation. Now, the next meeting where state funding can be released to Fairhope is not scheduled until next year. Thank you to the people of Fairhope, Read Freely Alabama, and Every Library Institute for helping support a public library when the state government has failed. Speaking of funding, this next story comes after last week's update about the Institute of Museum and Library Services and a case ruling in favor of states' attorneys general. The official website for the Institute of Museum and Library Services has a page regarding the reinstatement of grants that were previously terminated by the Trump administration. The statement on their page is curt and simple. Quote, upon further review, the Institute of Museum and Library Services has reinstated all federal grants. This action supersedes any prior notices which may have been received related to grant termination. Grantees should access the agency's electronic grants management system for further information. End quote. This page on imls.gov also includes a search field where organizations can retrieve further information about their grant status. This all comes along with the story from last week that included a ruling from Judge McConnell putting a restriction on the federal government from taking further actions in dismantling the IMLS without congressional approval. In the early weeks of the Trump administration, staff was severely cut, and it is yet to be revealed if those previous positions have been filled or if they remain vacant. For the time being, this comes as a major victory, but there is still a chance for things to change. With the government shutdown recently ending, it is possible for a bill to be introduced into Congress that could shutter the IMLS. While it is unlikely, it could happen. But for now, we are in the clear. Next, a quick story from Penguin Random House announcing a collection of K-pop Demon Hunters books for various markets. This program is a collaboration between 3 imprints from Penguin Random House: Random House Worlds, Random House Children's Books, and Penguin Young Readers. Penguin Random House describes the line as a range of fan-forward titles featuring the world of K-pop Demon Hunters. The first titles, for the fans, Little Golden Book and K-pop Demon Hunters, the official poster book, will be released on December 30th. For the older fans, Random House Worlds will release what they call a sophisticated coloring book in the fall of 2026, along with a manhwa, or a Korean-style graphic novel adaptation of the film, in 2027. There are more titles currently planned, and PRH claims there is potential for future titles based on the film to be announced at a later date. Next, a story from Tennessee where a library director is raising concern over LGBTQ book crackdowns. This story was broken shortly after Luann R. James was appointed the director of the Rutherford County Library System in Rutherford County, Tennessee. According to Luann, the Rutherford County Chief Information Officer and Library Board Chair, Cody York, demanded that she hand over an Excel spreadsheet with the names of patrons, their addresses, zip codes, book barcodes, number of children and adults in each household, and which titles they were checking out. The request came only a few days into Luann's role as director for the library system. The request also made her so uncomfortable that she sought whistleblower protection. At a library board meeting, she spoke out about the request and fears of retaliation for refusing to comply. This comes along with a statewide push in Tennessee targeting 181 library branches. In October, Tennessee libraries were instructed by the Secretary of State to audit juvenile book collections. This aligned with a Trump executive order titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biblical Truth to the Federal Government. 2 branches in Rutherford County alone closed for a week to review roughly 60,000 books for LGBTQ themes, likely fearing cuts in funding as seen by states like Alabama. Fellow board member Allison Belt called for Cody York to be removed as board chair, backed by other board member Angela Frederick. However, the board voted 7-2, keeping him in his role. Local advocacy group Rutherford County Library Alliance views this as an escalating campaign. Director Tatiana Silvas said, quote, "It appears that the majority of the board is more concerned about protecting one individual rather than upholding the duties and responsibilities that come with serving on our public library board, eroding public trust in the governance of this body." End quote. For now, Rutherford Library Director Luann R. James is refusing the request. However, it seems that the majority of the board is on the chair's side, refusing to remove him from his position over this appalling demand over people's private information. And closing the episode with some good news. A library board in Killeen, Texas has voted to keep a challenged book in its collection. As we reach the end of the year, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the constant stories about book challenges, threats against librarians or teachers, and bigotry against the LGBTQ+ community. So when I tell you that I am not surprised about the content, you can take my word for it. When Aiden Became a Brother by Kyle Lukoff, published in 2019 about a transgender child becoming an older sibling, the title was first challenged in 2023 during a big push by pro-censorship groups. Salado Public Library did not remove the book the first time it was challenged, and now it is making a second round of challenges. And again, voting 3-1 with one absent vote, the board decided to keep When Aiden Became a Brother on the shelves within their library system. Not only would the absent vote not have changed the outcome of the decision, the library board meeting was met with overwhelming support for the freedom to read from the community. This article only highlights signs and phrases like "choose knowledge over fear" in the crowd before entering the meeting area. 20 people took the stand for public comment in the board's 15-minute public forum before the vote. No comment is made about what was said in this article, but again, everything in this reporting shows that the community has been supportive of their public library's choice. This will conclude another episode of the Book Faire Podcast. As we approach the holidays, releases are winding down, and so I will be taking a brief hiatus. Next week will be another episode, probably shorter than normal, and the Book Faire Podcast will return in mid-January with more episodes featuring new releases and, of course, new interviews with authors and other industry professionals. If you'd like to learn more about any of the stories covered in this week's episode, you can visit patreon.com/thebookfair. There you will find links to news sources used throughout the episode, as well as episodes posted early. Following is completely free, there are no posts hidden behind a paywall, and you can simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Please don't forget, the best thing you can do to help the podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and Merry Christmas.
Do you wish you were in a book club, but you hate reading? Did you see Animorphs books at the book fair growing up and thought, I wonder what that's all about? Then check out Animorphs 55, the podcast. It's a book club-style review of all the Animorphs books, plus a bunch of other great 90s stuff. You don't have to have read the books to understand what's going on. We go over the plot in the episodes. You'll laugh, you'll think, you'll feel nostalgic. Animorphs 55, the podcast.